And then I asked them to rate their degree of concern about a variety of environmental issues. And you can see that many of them are concerned about many things, but that brown bar here, that shows you where people are most concerned, and so that's in the area of from mildly concerned to very concerned. So from here on down is the level of concern, and then from here on up is not really concerned. And so you can see genetically modified crops, people were really pretty concerned about that in our survey. That was one of the high ones. Another one was the use of chemical pesticides and chemical fertilizers. Those were probably the three categories where people were, there was a lot of them who were pretty concerned about it. Less so about mining peat from peat bogs, from peat moss, and less about use of edible plants for biofuels. Okay, so people didn't have as much of a feeling about those things and weren't quite as concerned. So taking a look at the question that we asked was, how likely would you be to purchase any one of these pot types? Okay, reusable, recyclable, and we did not explain these terms. And I purposely did not explain the terms because I wanted to see if people had a gut reaction to certain terms, so that, you know, when it comes to marketing this product, we know what terms will actually attract people and what will give a favorable response. Well, what I found out was that everybody would be likely to purchase, well, not everybody, but at least 3/4 would be likely to purchase any one of these pot types given certain conditions. And I allowed them to go in then and have written comments, and we got tons of written comments, and so I'm going to share some of those with you in just a moment. In terms of not likely to purchase, not many were not likely to purchase any of these pot types. So I didn't really get a lot of usable information here. What I did find out was that about 1/4 were unsure whether they would purchase it because they didn't have enough information. And these people are intelligent, they're educated, and they wanted more information. They wanted ingredient lists. They wanted to know how these things were made. They also wanted to see data that demonstrate container performance. And so these are things that I haven't shared with them yet, and so they didn't have the benefit of some of the knowledge that we are now going to be able to share. Okay, so I think where I got more information is when I asked the question, okay, so you're willing to purchase this, how much more would you be willing to pay for a 4.5-inch container over what you pay for a conventional nursery pot? And for biodegradable, it's fairly even across the board. Most people would be willing to pay at least 25 cents more. A little bit more for pots that fertilize the plant as they grow, as the plant grows. And I'll show you there's some differences there related to how I was able to cluster some of these responses.
They do that if they had a pot by pot side of a bio, one right versus a bio pot versus a regular plastic pot. If there's a price difference, they'd be willing to pay that much difference if it was versus the
right.
That's it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so as I showed you before, the one variable that I had in my respondent base was household income. So I decided, okay, let's focus on household income and let's take a look at those groups and what kinds of things are different. So in the income that was under $39,000 a year, we found most of those people were in two age categories. They were either 25 to 44 or they were over 60 and probably retired. 78% were female, and so there's a lot of females in this category, and only 56% are homeowners. So this is not as much. Remember, I think our homeowners were 91% for the overall mean, so only 56% in this category were homeowners. And only 53% had a bachelor's degree instead of 66% in the overall mean. These people purchase plants less often, only twice a year. Makes sense, they don't make as much money, they can't afford it. But 100% of them use compost in their gardens. These were heavy compost users, and nearly 40% of them used cover crops. So these are people who are really using sustainable practices. They tend to be purchasers of vegetable starts rather than flowering plants, so they're really looking utility. They're looking for value added, something they can eat and feed their family. And they would actually be willing to pay more for a pot, about 25 cents more, but only for a pot that provides fertilizer, because they see that as an added value. That's really critical to know, because that's a good marketing tool right there. If you know what they will pay extra for, you know where you can go with that. So these are people that make under $39,000 a year. Then we looked at the range of $40,000 to $59,000 a year. Most of these people were older. They were 60 or older. Many were female, about 3/4 were female, 83% were homeowners, so now you're getting a little bit higher percentage of homeowners. 74%, 3/4 of this group, had a bachelor's degree or more, and they were beginning to purchase plants more often. A little bit more disposable income, a little bit ability to buy more plants. These people were purchasing more flowering plants now, so they were getting away from the utility aspect of plant purchases and more towards ornamental. And they would be willing to pay 50 cents more for a pot, 4.5-inch pot that was biodegradable, and $1 more for a pot that fertilized the plant as it grows. So then we get to the 60 to 79,000. These people were a little bit younger, so the average age, well, not average, but they were basically in the category 45 years and older. Only 67% were female, so we had a better mix of females and males here. This is about what our overall mean was. So we had 33% males, 94% are homeowners, a high percent of homeowners, and 36% have a postgraduate degree. So these are people with master's degrees and PhDs. So I don't know how I ended up with such a smart group of respondents, but I did. These are heavy plant purchasers, 6 or more times a year. Annuals, perennials, vegetable starts equally. They purchase everything, so they're plant lovers. 44% of them use cover crops, but they would only pay extra for a compostable or a fertilizing pot, and they'd only pay 50 cents extra. So interesting to know about this category. And then we get to the 80,000 to 99,000. Again, mostly age 60, mostly female, many homeowners. 41% have a postgraduate degree, really sharp people. A lot of plant purchases, purchasing perennials and vegetable starts about equally. They would pay $1 more for a 4.5-inch biodegradable pot and $1.50 more for a pot that provided fertilizer. So these were the big spenders, okay? Now you would think that these would be the big spenders, but they aren't, okay? This is interesting, the $100,000 a year plus, mostly younger people, 45 to 59, probably working pretty hard. Nearly 40% were male, so now we're getting to a more closer 50-50 male and female group here. 97% are homeowners, 46% have a postgraduate degree. Big plant purchasers, mostly vegetable starts and herbs. They would only pay, they're cheap, they would only pay 25 cents or more for a biodegradable or 75 cents more for a fertilizing pot. So they would pay half of what the previous group would pay for the same kinds of pots. So I thought that was really interesting. Okay, so this is a summary of our overall results. The respondents valued plant quality in general over container type, but they were willing to purchase biorenewable pots if they improved or were neutral to plant health and the environment, and especially the soil. So they want a pot, they're really interested in these pots, but they want to know what they're going to do. They want to make sure they're not causing any more harm or interfering with the ability of that plant to grow. The willingness to pay more for biorenewables was linked to household income up to a point. Once we got past $100,000 a year, all bets were off. And then respondents were more willing to pay extra for a pot that fertilizes than for any other pot type, and that's kind of a generalization over the entire group. So getting back to our original question, what are the renewable biorenewable plant container characteristics that are deemed most desirable? Number one, they are willing to purchase these pots, but not if they negatively impact plant quality. So that's really important. They want no harmful residue left in the soil after the pot biodegrades. That's why they want to know what's in it. They want to make sure we're not leaving things in the soil that could cause harm to any of the organisms in the soil. They must biodegrade within one growing season. Okay? They've had really bad experiences in the past with biodegradable pots. People don't like them in Nevada because they don't work. Many of them would have preferred a gallon-sized pot. They asked for that. And some would like the pot to be consistent with USDA organic production standards. We have a lot of organic growers in Nevada, amazingly. And so that was a concern of theirs. And a lot of people who just, grow for their own family that try to be organic as well. And then I want to just end with some of the written responses. I think they're kind of good. These are kind of representative of the whole group. I couldn't obviously include them all. Price and quality are the plant are my main concern. Container is not that important. They will do whatever they need to do to make that pot that pot sustainable. Even if it's petroleum-based, they will recycle it, and they told me that. They want us to keep costs to a minimum to encourage use by all income levels, even if they could afford to pay more. They really wanted this to be broadly used, so they were very interested in this. I support cutting out the useless production of conventional plastics. Here's another one. The only hesitation I have is knowing that the compostable container will probably be made of GMO corn, which is not allowed or preferred in organic gardening. Now, I'm not sure if that's actually true. If you were to put a pot in a container that's made from GMO corn, if that wouldn't be allowed in organic gardening, that's something that we would have to check into. And then, is the container biodegradable in home composting pile or landfill? I would not want the plant the container with the plant because things don't biodegrade quickly in Nevada. And I like this one. Please don't call it the eco container or something silly like that, okay? So take a note, we don't want to call it eco container. And then there were some responses that were specific to fertilizing pots. That would be tremendous value, would solve the issue of what to do with all my containers. I like this idea a lot if the container would also biodegrade so the plants could get fertilizer through a large portion of its growth. Great idea. Would the type of fertilizer be listed as an organic, time-release, pet safe? I think they're thinking that we're actually putting a fertilizer in the pot. So they didn't understand that. I'd like to control my own fertilizer application rates. They're concerned about over-fertilizing. We have a big concern about fertilizers leaching into the groundwater and getting into our river system. So that's one of the concerns. And the others were similar. And so, conclusions. We need to educate the consumers about these containers. We need to give them as much information as possible. I think that's really critical. People don't like to be whitewashed. I said this before, and I think it still holds. People want information, and they want to know that it's going to work. The labeling that needs to describe how the container was made, under what conditions it will decompose, how quickly it decomposes, and then is it safe for soil microorganisms, and is it safe around children and pets? And then we need to keep the price competitive, or at least to show value-added attributes, so they'd be willing to pay more for something that they considered a value-added attribute.